We've got some new people joining. So real quick intros, builder team, you've got me as your host today. You've got Josh, you've got Drew, and we'll be taking you through your questions. So if you have any questions or anything you want to talk through today, add it into the chat. Otherwise, if you post it in the OH agenda thread in Discord, that's what we'll be going through today. All right, so let me just see who's here in the call. Let's see, we've got Alex, Andrew, Anne, Felicia, who is also from the builder team. We've got Jan, John, Scott, and Zspaceman. Hey, that is a really good crew today. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in, and we will start with let's see, is John McConnell? No, that's John McConnell. I'm looking for the other John. He's not in here, so we'll skip Zenny today. Spaceman, are you ready? You've got something you're working on with an ID record that you need updated. Do you want to jump on? Are you ready?
There we go. I had to unmute it. Hold on. There we go. All right, let's share this. All right, am I sharing?
I don't see it
I
yet.
don't see anything yet.
Is that a yes? Sorry. Oh, share. There we go.
There you
Okay,
go.
there we go. There we go. There we go. Okay, so here is kind of what I'm working on. This is for a bigger project. So here's kind of the mock-up that I'm doing. So I'm going to create like contracts, and users will be able to save contracts in a templates folder for them to use as a later date. Basically how I want it to go is they would just click on an option and it would just come over here. So they can click it and then they can remove it and they can do all these fun things. So the moment they are happy with all their options and they put in some numbers, whatever it may be, they will save that. It'll come over to the data record. Now, I don't know why I created two, but I'll figure that one out. But here is kind of where it gets a little tricky. The moment they hit the save the contract, it's creating a new contract. And I need it to pull the IDs from these options. And then take that ID that it just created in that option and then put it over here to this option.
Yep.
So I've got to create the moment on click and create the contract. And then I need to create the option contract as well. And then I need to update that field on the contract proposals with this ID so it can be pulled from a later date or templates or, you know, whatever it may be.
Yep. You're very close.
Yeah.
So if you're ready, I can tell you on this screen exactly what to add, and that will solve it for you.
Okay.
So on this update contract, you're telling it to update the field that you want to update, but you also need to tell it which record, like which record do you need to update that field on. So you need to add an ID of the actual original contract. So you can map another field just below your mouth. Yeah, right there. And the field, so let's see, your main contracts proposal. So that's all correct. Yeah. So the field's going to be ID because this is for the main contract proposal record that you just created in step one. So when you create it in step one, it actually gives you a variable called new record ID. That is the newly created record ID. So in that, instead of text, change it to variable, but you can do new record ID. Its current page is correct. And then just, you have to type new record date. I don't think it'll show up, or yeah, you can copy paste. And then that way, that's all you need to do. So that way now it'll know which record to update, and you know, it should work for you. And I don't know if you need to,
do I need this one right here? I guess because maybe.
Is that just one question? Is that create option record related to the contract proposal at the top?
Yes.
Well, that's
So-
creating the record in the other table, and then step 5 is trying to link them up.
So it's not dependent on 4 isn't dependent on 1. I'm just because there's not a weight above it. I was just going to say,
Yeah.
Oh, like right here at a weight.
No,
yeah,
I don't think it's.
It sounds like you
dependent
don't
on
have to though. That was
Yeah.
just me double checking.
5 is dependent on 1, and that does have the weight. So I think you're good.
Yeah.
So this will update that option 1 field, and I think then you want to make it so it updates whatever option number is correct, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that should do that. And then if I go to my data collections, contract proposals.
Oh, was that already working before though? Because there are already values in there.
Well, I may have got something mixed up here.
Yeah, well, I think you needed to do that step anyway. So that should be correct. And then the next step, I guess, would be figuring out that that field. It's actually a little tricky, but
Kind of it. Oh, so you know what it is? I think it's this one right here. I don't need to update that.
gotcha. Yep. So maybe it did override it then. It
Yeah.
probably did. Yeah.
Okay, let me try this one more time. Create option. Go 3, 2. Save that. Okay. Data collections, contract proposals.
Or is that top one that didn't work maybe?
Yeah, it did not work.
So we can step through, let's see.
So this creates the contract, the new contract.
Yep. Oh, I
This-
know why it didn't work actually.
Okay.
See that one you're on. So it created the contract and it saved the variable as new record ID. Then you created an option record, which also it replaced that new record ID variable. So see at the bottom where it says new record ID, just make that anything else. Like you can add like underscore option or new option record ID. You're not even using it right now, I don't think. You might use it though. But yeah, so if you do that and try it now in step 5, a new record ID variable will be correct. And it was coming from step 4 before instead of 1.
Okay, now this one should be. Bam. Okay. All right. I think that's it. I think.
Yeah,
I
so that
figured out-
part should work. And that's pretty common. Like 2 things that are common that if you use grid lists and other things, you don't notice them all the time, but it's setting that ID for what to update is the one thing. And then using that new record ID variable, that's another really common thing that like all the time you're gonna create a record and then use that variable right away to update it or add it to somewhere else.
The new update data records for anything builder related is going to actually include a key field before you get to like the key value pairing. It's going to include a specific spot for you to key the record, basically making it more obvious that you should clarify the ID of the record that you want to target.
Right. Well, I can't wait to see it. I appreciate your help, and I'm sure there'll be more questions along the way. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. I love your design. It's always so like clean and like looks so good. So
Thank you.
nicely done on that. Okay, let's call up Anne. And then we'll do Alex, and then we'll go to my next question. And then Scott also wanted some help too. So Anne, you were needing some help with the data relationship feature.
Right, that's right. Thank you. So I did the onboarding and just to show you what I don't know what to get. So here, I would like user to select like a few options, like they input their username, select profile picture, and select their native language, target language, etc. So here I saw that Builder has a new feature called the data relationship. So I changed the field to that because I think it makes sense. But back in my interface, I'm not sure how to connect that. So for example, the user and avatar is saved because last time I think Drew helped me. So what I did was save to data collection, username and avatar, and then we have a variable How do we? Okay, we have a variable here to save it before I move on to the next page. So that saves. But when I move on to the grid list, I didn't change it to repeating list. Do I have to, or?
No, they're actually the
Okay.
same thing, just a new
Okay,
name.
great.
Yeah, so you're
That's
good.
great. Okay, so when I do the same thing here, I think previously I did also a variable. So I don't know if that's how I should do it now given that we have data relationship. So I'm not sure how this is going to save.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, are we setting that variable from the ID of the native language and not like the native language name?
Yeah, let me take a step back and explain. That's what I was about. That's what I think needs to be explained.
Yeah.
That the collection relation thing in the data collections area. I think it's like misleading a lot of people a little bit. It's like
Oh.
we're trying to make it really easy, but what it's actually doing is like really simple. Like all it's doing is it's saving the ID for the other record that you're referencing. So in your case, like if you have native language,
Mhm.
if you select in this database, so you use that drop down there and select like English or a language,
Mhm.
the actual value that it's saving is the ID for English from that English table. So it's sort of like that part's really confusing because it's not intuitive necessarily. But once you kind of understand that, basically, if you didn't have that field as a relational type, if it was just a text type, the value for English US would be the ID for the English record, and the value for Spanish would be the Spanish ID. And so when you're using it in the studio, you always only save ID values and reference ID values when you're filtering. Does that kind of make sense? So I can walk you through more, but basically
Okay.
everything comes down to an ID. And despite what you see here, it's all about the ID.
Oh,
I think one thing I'd add to that too. So we still store the value that you put into this field. So technically, if you've put the name of the native language, if we actually switched away from the collection relationship field type here, the field value actually might just be the name that you're wanting to do, but you do need to put the ID in. And then this is simply looking at, like Drew said, the name or the field that you've keyed that has that ID on the other collection.
So should I change the field type? Or?
No, this is what I would set up here for sure. It's just that when you create the record, you're always going to want to pull the ID from the native language collection.
I think another way to think about this is like when you select this relation in this section, it's only applying to this section. Like it's just for your own use. So you can change that to a text field or to any other field, and it wouldn't change anything at all in your application. That's the key. So this is just like a helper for you so that you don't have to look at a bunch of IDs. You can actually look in human readable text what relations are.
Okay.
Yeah, but when you're using it, it's all IDs. I don't know. I think if you switch that field, it would actually show an ID in that field. I don't think it would show the name, but I'm not sure. But either way, like when you're using it, IDs is all that matters.
Well, it would show name only if she's created records already and she used the name field in this flow. It would show, I think it would have the name that whatever was select native language at the time would be the value that pops up there.
I'm not sure like how that works in the back end, so I really don't know, but I actually feel like that doesn't make that much sense because how would you reference it? Like you can't reference a name, it's not a unique identifier.
Well, it can't, that's the point, is that it's not referencing in the lookup, so it's looking up a blank value because it's trying to find the ID of the name text string, but it can't find anything because there's not related there. Either, this is a little in the weeds, I apologize. Either way, we just switching to ID in this use case is the answer.
Okay, so what should I do?
So right now you're on update record and you're gonna set native language. What you're setting right now is a variable called select native language.
Right.
Is the value of that an ID or a name? That's my question.
Is it from here that it has to? Yeah, it's select variable. It's here.
So it's a variable coming from the parent page.
I think it's probably no values being set then, I think, based off of this.
Well, you might have it set on the parent page, right?
Parent page.
I don't know. That's what it's saying. It's saying set a variable on the current page that is like a variable on the parent page already. So I don't know if it might not be there then. I don't know.
This is not setting the variable here.
That is updating a record with a variable. So it's not setting it. It's trying to say update the native language field with the variable called select native language.
Mhm.
So what we want to do on the grid or the repeating list row for the language, so right there,
Mhm.
do a when you click it to select it, I don't know what this logic is, but wherever we want to like set it, do at on the set variable there.
Well, hang on before you change it though, because you might have this set like this on purpose, right? Or are you saying you don't know? Because basically it's if you have a variable on the parent page that has the language set, that's what this is referencing. So you might have that. But, I don't want to go change it if it's correct.
Are you asking me? Sorry.
Yeah,
Oh, I have no idea. Actually, I don't know how I got here. It's been a while. Sorry.
I think so. Whatever you're selected on, which I actually can't tell what you're selected on, what page. Can you? It's probably a grid. Oh, I see. Native language card. So can you go to the parent page, which is the grid list that has that in it? So yeah, on this page, something on this page may be setting that native language variable. Do you think that sounds correct, or is that not even?
I think the only thing I have here is the update record.
Okay.
It can't be this one.
Well, we can make a change to that variable for sure then, because it seems like it's wrong. But I don't want to like break something else on accident if we just don't really know what's going on. That's why
I can just bother you again if it breaks.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, so they're selecting their native language based on these. They're like clicking an image and that selects the language, right?
Right.
So it actually select it on that page. So yeah, on the click event for this, go in there. So this is doing a condition for if native languages are supported. I assume that that's correct. So you can click that bottom flow, step 2. And then on that number 2, so you're trying to set a variable. I'm not sure. I think this is just like a wrong input type maybe. So see that row to get variable. Oh, this is a different action than I thought. Right? Why does it say row to get variable from?
This is a really weird action.
Is this the one where it's like get variable from grid row or something? It might be a.
Yeah, I would delete this action and I would just use the normal set variable action. I'm not sure what that one was. That was where I got dropped. I was like, what am I looking at here?
I don't know either. Sorry.
There you go. Yeah, set variable. There we go. Same icon, but it's going to be a different thing.
I think I might have like same issue as before that I chose the wrong one.
Yeah, I think that's like a grid list specific one maybe or something. But
so is it
so you're trying to set the variable, yeah, on the parent page.
Yeah.
And you have to use that same name. This is where you type the name. So actually go back to text for this one.
Okay.
And the name was like native. Yeah, there you go.
This one.
And then so here, this value, this is where you need this value to be the ID. And so on this card, I'm guessing that you have current record field value ID is the ID you want. So we should try that. I'm not like confirming that, but that's what I think it'll be. You go to current record field value.
Okay.
And the collection is whatever collection the languages one. Yeah. And then ID.
Oh. Okay.
And the reason I'm doing this is because you're in that grid row. So that grid row is showing like one page for each language, and it has all the fields in it. So the current record field ID for ID, or the current record field for ID, will be the ID of that language, and that's exactly what you want saved as that variable.
Okay, so I can delete this one.
Yep.
Let me just put the name here. Okay. And I should do this thing, or should I test it?
Well, so now I don't know exactly if it'll work with your setup or not yet, but at this point, if you click continue and it like will find the correct value for that variable,
Okay.
as long as that's enough to test, you can test it or we can keep going. Yeah, that should be correct. So it should set native language to the ID right now. And then when you look at it in the database, it should say in human readable the correct language. We can test it, I think.
To test it, I gotta do the whole logging.
Oh,
again.
okay.
Yeah, that might take a while. So I can test it offline. And Cora, do you think I can ask one quick question, or should I move on to other people first?
Yeah, we've got time for a quick
Oh,
question.
okay, so the quick question would be, how do I set the first record or item, repeating this item as the default? Is there like a simple way to say a default is selected? Because I want the users to like, when they click on something, the first thing would be selected.
Mhm. I think so you can always do that. It's kind of like there's many ways to get that done. In your
Mhm.
case, the best way to get that done, I think, is when that main preference page loads, all you're doing to like set the language, all you're doing is setting a variable, right? So what you can do is when that page loads, just either manually set the variable, or you can like manually target that that page and call a click event. Like you can do that too, but I would just say select native language equals, and then put an ID of whatever default you want in there.
The one thing I'm curious about, do you always want to be the first thing in the row, in the grid row that shows up? You always want the
first thing.
Drew, I'm curious because there's also CSS styling. I'm assuming you're doing on it, like when it's selected, it like looks selected on the screen. Like there's like shiny.
I don't know if they actually select, right? If it's a
Well,
CSS,
I can tell you a way that'll actually cover all that. It's pretty quick. We can do it right
Okay,
now,
that's
and
great.
it's probably more helpful to everyone anyway.
Yes.
If you go to the row, so you can just choose one. Yeah, you can go to that native language for now. On this row, every row gets an ID, like an index. It's called array index, this variable that will say like what order it's in. So you can actually on page load check if it's the first one, and if it is, you can run whatever flow you run when you click it. So yeah, on page load or page binding, it doesn't really matter probably in this case. You can just do it here. Add a new action that's a condition, or it's called if then something.
Okay.
We've renamed it. It used to be called compare values. Now it's if then.
I usually search condition. There you go. If then logic check. So this, what you're going to do is we're going to check that special variable, that array index. So change that to variable, current page, and then it's underscore. Yeah, you just have to type this one and it will show up. And then it's array, which is lowercase ARRAY, and then capital I in index. So NDEX. So that's like a built-in builder variable that is the order. So the first one is 0, the second one is 1, the third one is 2.
Wow.
So yeah, so basically what you're doing is you're going to say if that variable equals 0. So in test value 2, you can just type 0. That'll tell you it's the first record.
Okay.
And then for that flow to run whatever flow happens when they click it normally, which I believe is select native language step 1. So you just run that. And that's like the same as if someone clicked it. So when the page loads and that first record loads in, it's going to get clicked automatically, basically.
Okay. And it should bring in the CSS along with it, right?
It should do whatever happens, yeah, when you click it. So it's kind of
Okay.
foolproof.
I will test it out offline. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Thank you. Oh, by the way, Drew, I tried the honeypot technique. It was really fun. I really like doing it. It's cool.
Nice,
Thanks.
nice. That's cool. I like that technique too. It's a little more creative than the captcha.
I feel like a genius doing it because it's hidden.
Nice.
Thank you.
What is this honeypot technique, Drew?
It's for like, captchas, like reCAPTCHA when you fill out a form. There's like an alternate way to do it. It's not quite as secure, but like I prefer it so much. You put like a hidden field or there's many ways to do it. You get creative, but you can put a hidden field and call it like name required or something, so that when bots go, they don't know it's hidden. Bots can't tell which fields are hidden. So they'll see it and they'll fill out the name because it's required. But then on your check, when you submit, you say, if that name field has a value, don't submit. So it's like a trick. You trick the bot. But there's like lots of ways of doing it where like you can have one that's a hidden field that's filled in and like they have to remove it and stuff. Like you can do like little
Yeah,
tricks.
yeah.
And after a while, if you have a popular site, I think the bots actually eventually figure them out. But you can get away with them for a long time. And if it's not
Oh.
it's not like a sought after site, you get away with them forever.
Yeah. Oh, that is super cool. I love it.
And a quick question on that is the CSS doesn't matter, right? For the field, it doesn't have to match with the other fields. It can be just a field, right?
Yeah, it's hidden, so it really doesn't matter at all.
Okay, thank you.
All right, cool. Alex, let's call you up and see if we can chat about your project. And then let me see if anyone else joined the call. Okay, cool. So we'll do Alex, and then we've got a couple after that. What are you working on?
Sweet. Hopefully you can see this.
Mhm.
Yes, it's a bit small for me. I'm not sure if
Is
it
it?
is for anyone else.
Move some stuff around. So I was working on, is that any better? Basically working through Mark's chat GPT tutorial, and I actually got it working, so that's great. But I'm gonna try and do something based on that, or on that chat GPT action. Basically it's like a gift recommendation type bot. You ask it, what should I buy for someone that likes yoga, and then it returns a list. What I'd like help with is thinking through like how I can work with the results. And I kind of asked in the Discord before. So I've got this is that markdown element. So it's actually returning, rather than just like a long string of text, like it's kind of formatted, but I'm really looking to take this and like use it elsewhere and further. So what I'm thinking is like you would ask it for a recommendation, it would return 5 results, and then how I would do something with each result. And what I'm thinking for now is like to like link out to a Google search or something like that, or like Amazon, like somewhere where the user would go searching for that thing.
Well, you don't want to search if you don't have to, right? You want all the answers right here.
Well, totally. Then it's like, well, where would you buy it? Or like kind of like the next shopping type result. So that's kind of where I'm at, what I'm trying to think through. I've got like one thing I was thinking about with Amazon is you can do like I was going to do like click a button, load them into a new window, freeloading in Amazon with that keyword in the search field, and it's already auto-populated those search terms. So I don't know if that makes sense. One thing I was thinking is if you had that keyword, if I can string that into, like this is an Amazon link here. If I can like take that data and plug it into there, and then on button click, link it out, and it would, change that magic keyword to beach balls or beach umbrella, whatever so that's kind of what I'm thinking. I don't know if I've described that well, but
I get it. I get it also because I do the same things. Like whenever you, first step is like you make an AI app, and then the next step is like, okay, how do I like,
I want to do something with it.
Through this information and do stuff with it. Yeah. I think what's one of the craziest things that this is really dependent on your queries and stuff, but you can usually just tell ChatGPT to like give you exactly what you want. So like you might say, give me the answer and then give me the answer in a JSON format or something like that. And like depending on the data, if you can get that, that's like the easiest. That's like the best way you can possibly do it, is if you can tell it to return the data in JSON. Either it returns only JSON and you format it for the user, or you tell it to return both, but that would be a little more expensive because it's more tokens.
Sure.
But either way, once you get that JSON, you can just use it as just like data in Builder. Like it's regular JSON data, and it's super powerful if you can do it. If that won't work, because sometimes that just doesn't work out for whatever reason, you have markdown there, and that markdown can be parsed. So like you will be able to parse through that and pull out the different bullets and stuff. It's just going to be like some regular expressions and some paths and like it might be a little tricky, but I would say first shot those. Do you think that JSON might work?
I would 100% do the JSON route.
I was wondering
only if it doesn't
obviously,
work is when you would do something. If that works, definitely do the JSON route. I mean,
I can if it's helpful, that prompt I showed at the beginning, Alex, of like how to generate those databases.
Yeah.
100% just prompting ChatGPT to give me a JSON array that I do all of that with. I'm happy to pull up the prompt. Like it's just, there's nothing that special in it.
So I was actually thinking about that, and that'd be great, Josh, if you could. The thing that I started thinking about is that it's a user input, so they're not going to be like give me recommendations and export the data or like return it in JSON format. So can I like step in the middle and like
you concatenate that value.
Yeah,
you just concatenate and then you pre-fill in either from like a data collection, or you could just put it in the script itself.
And I'll just say like return it in and they wouldn't even know.
Yeah, what you're gonna do, you're using chat, right?
Yeah.
So you're basically, you have two ways to tell it information. You can do it in the prompt that the user sends, which is where you concatenate. So you take the user input, and then behind the scenes that they don't see, you would just concatenate user input plus text and type in whatever you want, and you add it to the prompt. But the chat stuff actually has a more powerful tool now, which is a system message. And I don't know if Mark released the system message action, but I think he did. So you can use this additional action that works with the ChatGPT stuff. It'll add a system message, which is 100% telling the AI what to do behind the scenes. That's the whole point of the system message. But once you add it, it'll stay in your conversation history and stuff. So really the way they recommend and like the way that works the best with these is you'll start every conversation with a system prompt. So in your case, you'll say, you are like a nutrition expert, whatever they need to. And then at any point in that conversation, you can inject system prompts in. So maybe in the beginning, you can tell it like this would be up to you at this point, but you can tell in the beginning, always respond in JSON. Yeah. And then when they respond, instead of using the markdown element, when they respond with JSON, you can convert that into elements or do something. You could do that. Yeah. Or like I said, you could try to say respond in human text and JSON, and it'll just do both, which is kind of fun too.
Cool. Okay. And then that's kind of what I was, obviously not the system message, but like this is kind of what I was thinking. So I'm glad it kind of on the right track.
Can you give me the ability to screen share, Cora?
Yeah.
Whoever can give me permission. I was just going to share.
Might just because he was sharing, I think.
Yeah, you're right. So this is the prompt that I built, and this is like what I think a lot of I plan on putting a lot of content together on this, because one of the ways that you're going to be able to more programmatically use OpenAI is using something like JSON and parsing out the response to go do custom actions based off of whatever that value that you got was. Because like the variance of just normal human language responses is limited, of like, it's more difficult to parse out, predict. So like this is the full prompt of saying, I want you to give me all the data collections and fields that I need, as well as the builder specific settings that we need to put on these data collections. Here's your behavior, the full prompt. I give it a little bit of formatting so that I can save on tokens long-term. Overall, you would build this into like a model if you built it like further out. And then I'm literally just giving it exact instructions for every single action, and like how to do a one-to-one relationship, how to do a many, my preferences, and defining even down to the settings and the examples of permissions on each collection, what a child-parent relationship is. And then I give it the exact JSON format I'm telling it to follow. One thing I noticed, I had to add at the end of it, please make sure to use the JSON format only. Like I had to reiterate 3 times, or else sometimes it would throw in like a, hey, good question. And then it would give me the JSON. So you might have to work through little stuff like that. Yeah. But then the end of it is just, this is where I fill in the blank of values from the concatenate, the message inputs on the page, and then it gives me back the response. And I think programmatically, like people talk about building models, which is 100% like going to be really valuable over time, but you don't need to build a model and everything. You can just build essentially a mini model in your prompt that gets really, really specific into what you want. And then I get to just unpack this data and set it into repeating list elements to do like what I have on the page to create the records. And I could have, or I could just read it with actions and then go do things based off of reading the JSON values.
Crazy.
It's like really cool. And it's so much easier to do it this way than like it becomes a lot less more complicated, I think. And I would even have, like, if you wanted the normal human response, I would just tell them to put the normal human response even in the JSON too.
Yeah, just as a JSON value.
To make
The
it
one
easier to
question,
find.
if you go this route, the one question you'll run, or issue you'll run into is like, if you're using GPT-4, I think Scott mentioned this in the chat, like a system prompt of this size with a response that has like the nutrition facts, that'll get like, you'll see that that's pretty fast. Like you'll have like maybe 5 to 10 users and just watch your costs going up like $5-6 a day, probably, like on API costs. GPT-4 is expensive, but GPT 3.5 is like a magnitude cheaper, order of magnitude cheaper. So I don't know, like if it would be the same results or not. You know, I know I'm in the same, because I have that chat app that I put out, and my costs are clearly too high for what I would like charge for. It's pretty funny, but like I'm gonna switch it down to 3.5 and see what happens. It's gonna chop my
I've
cost.
actually got that, as like a to-do, so that at least for testing, that I'm not like
True.
earning
Yeah.
money. Yeah.
I used 3.5 for this, and it gave me adequate, I think, initial replies.
That's the thing. 3.5 is good. Like ChatGPT, when it came out and everyone was freaking out, that's 3.5.
Yeah.
But 4 came out, and then it's like obviously much better, but it's like, don't forget ChatGPT or 3.5 is still amazing.
Yeah, 4, honestly, I think is going to be more important when you're doing the multimodal stuff, and imagery, video inputs become more important to it. Because I think for a lot of standard stuff, 3.5 is fine. And don't forget, you can ask follow-up prompts too. Like as we build this out, I would have like an interactive button say, hey, this is a great start for this collection. Can you add 2 additional fields? Which if you interact with ChatGPT normally, one of the best things you can do is just like dive further into that. Is say that in response to what it just did, and it'll just go deeper. And so, because it has a limit of like how much it should give you in each response typically. So just asking you to dive deeper will narrow its focus into something. And so like this follow-up will definitely have on the collection level. It's actually what I built first, was how to do a collection only. And then I was like, we can build all of that. And that's what this came and do. So I have like the prompts already ready to like take this and do like what may be a more complete data collection on it. But I think that JSON trick, I'm going to push a lot of content on using JSON here shortly, because it's truthfully an unlock. It's basically like giving yourself a way to do it's your own little language that you can format however you want, and then interpret with builder actions, and then go do whatever you want. Like an API call, like set up a grid list that goes and grabs the image of the thing that you're pointing to and say, hey, buy this, write a little description for it, and then just click link to purchase and get all the affiliate stuff that Scott's mentioning. Like it's a total unlock. It's truthfully is treating it like with JSON as like its response and the input that you can give it is basically creating your own dynamic API that can do anything. That's really how to think about it. It's let's normal humans communicate like normal humans, and then you format it like an API call. Instead of having 50 different things to go do, you get one API call that can do anything.
Ooh, Josh. I love it. Blowing minds already. I can't wait. And I'm obviously, if you guys have questions, Josh is like on the forefront of pushing like what can be done with Builder and AI, and he's exploring a lot of stuff for things that we're going to be doing with making it easier to build apps. So yeah, definitely reach out to him. All right. So I want to keep moving because we've got about 15 minutes left. And I want to jump to Scott, and then Andrew, I think is the last one who's got a quick CSS question. So Scott, you mentioned you were having some issues with the ChatGPT action.
Yeah, I'm going to let John demo because he's actually the one building it.
Okay, cool.
But we were trying we were trying to use the new actions and we're running into some problems. So we just created a blank page with a very simple, like generic request, and it's not loading it's not running the API call. So John, I'll let you take over from here. You might want to mute though.
Based off your Discord chat, I have a small guess on this, but it's more of a guess at this point.
Yeah, let me unmute real quick first, and then I'll put my screen back up. So yeah, we were trying to do I ran through the demo that Mark did, the video series, and it made perfect sense and aligned okay. We tried to do a slight variation of that with the action, and let me get the meeting chat out of the way real quick. And we wanted to do something like, rather than set it to a collection, set it to a variable, and when we set it to a variable, it would not then run the API call at all in the browser. So trying to figure that out. I just set it to use the local storage, and it runs the call, and it gives me back basically what I'm looking for. I think it was, yeah. And then take that and set it into, and we're doing the same kind of thing, Alex, that you're trying to do. That's what we've been doing from the start without the chat part, just the completions part, where we would take like this big, long, convoluted description and say, okay, grab the important pieces out of it, put it into a bullet point list, and put it into a JSON so that we can then extract that out and put it into separate boxes and put it where we want. So
And that's on a separate page. This was just a proof of concept to show that the API call was not running and nothing else was interfering with it.
yeah, so the local storage gives back basically the right information. And then so I took that, and I was expecting to be able to go down here and say, okay, set the variable for the reply, and then set the reply into the markdown element on the page. But that didn't necessarily work either. So
Well, John, let's focus on the variable function first. So if John changes this back from local storage to custom.
Yeah.
I mean, I could set it in the console log, but it doesn't really matter because it doesn't run the.
Yeah.
So one thing, something I think is supposed to go in that messages field that pops up, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
I could just enter something, right? Like this thing.
It's probably the variable for your previous messages, right? I actually have never even seen this action, so I don't know yet.
Yeah,
But I would guess the messages, because you're doing custom, so
Right.
you're saying you're storing your stuff somewhere else. It needs to send all those past messages each time. I bet you that's supposed to be a variable of your past message history.
What if there's no message history?
Then blank would probably would work, or I
Okay.
mean, maybe that's the error. If it's blank, it doesn't work or something. But
Yeah.
sense.
Because
You
what
could
we're
try-
trying to,
or you could try an array. You could try like an empty array, maybe. We can see. Yeah, Josh, I don't know if you know this action better than me. But I don't even
I haven't done custom drop down at all yet. So like, I think this is exactly right. It's probably a null value issue that I think is causing it not to run.
So yeah, we can try just do like like that, or maybe you might have to put curly brackets in, like give it one actual record, but you could try like that first.
Yeah, we'll try it like that. Yeah, that fired it.
That fired it. So I'll message Mark. I just messaged Mark to handle that. That's probably just us making sure that if it's null, we still run it appropriately.
Yeah, definitely a bug, but that's the workaround, it looks like.
yeah, the initial problem that we're having is that we're using this to write or to summarize descriptions that from data that's imported from Etsy for artists. And then the difficulty we're having though is that it was remembering every previous conversation it ever had, and so we in the API call that we ran, and we weren't able to create instanced conversations. So one conversation per project. It was remembering, someone's earrings project and also someone's sign project and all that other stuff. And so the new one we're hoping will allow us to instance those conversations more effectively.
Yeah, I think if you use variable, if you're doing a custom thing like that, where you're not storing it in the data collection, it probably would just work. Because like
Okay.
there's no way for it to access those outside of that, but
Yeah, my workaround that I did for that, I still did local storage, but I wanted every refresh to be totally new. And so I maybe should have just used custom, but instead I actually made a dynamic variable name as a set variable action at the beginning. And I used that variable name dynamically to then eventually populate, so the follow-up flow could still refer to whatever the dynamic variable's name was, and then get the right values. And so it was actually the first time I ever didn't use a rigid variable's name, because I wanted the variable to be reset at the beginning of every new call, so that it didn't reference any of the previous stuff as well. I think that formatting is useful specifically for more of like the text complete setup versus the conversational chat setup.
Mhm. Cool. Well, I think that fixed the problem. So
Yeah.
we can go back to
Well,
testing this some more.
we'll get a bug in on that because that's important. We have, there's like 2 to 4 other, I think, other OpenAI actions we're trying to put together that ultimately all use the same API call, but there's different ways to structure the whole no code action to make certain use cases easier.
Yeah, on the call that we have right now, you mentioned system messages, and is that not enabled on the current call? On the current action?
it's I actually don't know if there's an initial one in there.
Might be what messages is. I think messages in the storage method, isn't that the system message?
So, well, there's like automatically basically. So yeah. So one thing, which is what Josh is talking about, is in that messages field right there, you can add a system message by, actually, I can tell you what to type if you want to just type it real quick, but
Sure.
if you
Yeah.
go right now, open a curly bracket, and then in quotes, do system, and then colon, and then that, put your message in there. That whatever's in there, that'll be a system message. And the way it looks in OpenAI is if it comes from the user, instead of system, it says user, the same format. And if it comes from the chat bot, it says assistant.
Right.
So those are like the 3 things: system, user, and assistant. So you can actually form system, user, and assistant messages in that messages field if you want, or just put the system, and then as it saves and builds the conversation, that system will always be the first one. So it'll always send that first. That's how it works. But there's another action coming out. I thought it was out. I said earlier it was out, but I guess it's not. So it's like a helper action for this action that will just create a system message into your chat whenever you want. So it'll be a little easier then. But for now, doing it that way, or if you're in your case, you have that variable of the chat history, you can manipulate that any way you want. So at any point, if you just insert a record for like system and then the message.
Can we try this real quick before we hop off to make sure it's formatted and working properly?
Let's do it.
John, maybe change it to something so that, like, every word starts with P or something like that. I don't know, just so we know that.
And sure.
There you go. Add request. Oh, you might have to, let's see. Additional provision allowed. System was unexpected. What? Why? Oh, maybe it might not be the exact format. That's a thing. Maybe I can find it real quick. It's the right thing there, but it's like saying that the input's not correct. You might have to say like, what would you have to say? Like messages, object, and then open the array.
I don't know.
I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find it really quick right now, but I bet you it's a formatting thing. I mean, I know it's a formatting thing because it's a bad request.
Does it need the full hard brackets there, or is it nested inside of the?
Yeah, well, I mean, it does. The thing is, I didn't make this action, so I have no idea what this action expects, but like the real thing would, yeah, because it's an array. You could try to remove the hard brackets. I don't think that actually makes sense.
You need to say role, colon, then system.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Thank you so much. My bad. Yeah, so instead of system as the key is role, and then colon system, and then after put a comma, and then the key for the comment is comment.
Gotcha.
Right?
No, it's content.
Oh,
Content. I shouldn't be just saying this all off the top of my head. And then, yeah, just like that.
You don't have this stuff memorized, Drew? Happens.
The amount of stuff I've memorized is actually shocking. Like sometimes I remember weird formatting, but
You've probably forgotten more than anybody like knows about this stuff.
the king though is Dorian. That he'll remember like insane strings of letters and numbers. I'm like, what? Like he remembers like people's project IDs.
Yeah, he's a savant. He's definitely a Rain Man.
There you go. So I don't know. We'll see if the response comes back caps.
No, it didn't work.
I think that's how you do it. I don't know if maybe the prompt, I mean, it worked because like it took that system message. I'm almost positive that's correct. I don't know if maybe ChatGPT just didn't like that.
Well, hey guys, we do have just a few minutes. Is it okay? Do y'all have guidance on maybe what you could play around with a bit more, just so we can tackle Andrew's CSS question?
Well, mine is not important. It's okay.
No,
Mine's a
no,
very
no,
minor thing. Carry on with this. I can deal with it in the Discord. It's not a problem.
No. It's okay. I think we have enough, at least right now, to do what we were trying to do.
Okay.
The system message is a bonus. That's all. So
Okay.
We could
We'll
berate
definitely get
Josh
that
about that.
action out, or when we do get it out, I'll make sure to chat you guys so that you know. and
Yeah.
can
You're probably really close too. I mean, I bet you could just figure it out from here, especially if you look at the docs. There might be a little thing we missed or something.
Okay. So Andrew, well, let's do it. Scott, thank you. Scott and John, thank
Yeah.
you for letting us tackle Andrew's question real quick. What was
Thank
your
you, everybody.
CSS question?
Great. Let me share my screen if that's okay. So ignore the UI. It's just very basic at the moment. I'm just working a few things out. Basically, I've got these two columns here, column 1 here, column 2 here. And I've got this green placeholder. That's all that is at the moment. Basically, I want that to sit beneath the previous step and save and continue. However, this is a component that's using relative setting. So it's actually sitting down below this, even though it's showing up here. So it pushes this green bar down. The green bar won't be a green bar ultimately. Is there any way I can set it so that it's not taking up this space in this div here? Does that make sense? If you have a look at the div here, it should be the same size as this div. But because I've got the...
So you want it in the bottom of the white? Is that kind of what you mean?
Well, basically, I want this green bar to sit across underneath this div. But because I've got the Lottie loading as a relative, it's actually sitting...
Is it
If I can find it.
the
It's
Lottie?
actually sitting there, but even when I've got it shown in the correct place, it still takes up that space. Is there any way to have the Lottie sitting up there without taking up that space?
It shouldn't be doing that now. I don't know if that's what's doing it potentially.
Okay, is it not?
Because you're doing a relative there.
Yeah.
You want that as, so you have a component for the Lottie.
Yeah.
You're trying to put that, not have it not affect anything else on the page, but be in the
Correct.
center of that white box, basically.
Correct.
Drew's
I
like,
was,
Everyone
assuming,
wants to not
I was maybe incorrectly thinking that if I was using relative, it would actually release this space.
Yeah, I think I might be opposite. So relative means it's going to affect everything else. Like it's normal,
Okay.
like relative is like normal. So if you put something, it's going to push other stuff down, maybe push other stuff to the side.
Okay.
That's like relative. Absolute means it's not going to affect other stuff on the page.
That's what
And then
I
fixed
think.
also doesn't affect other stuff, and it's slightly
Okay.
different. In your case, yeah, I think you want absolute, and there's a really tricky gotcha with position
Okay.
that I can help you with right now. And if anyone's listening, like this is the big unlock with position is like when you position something absolute, it's relative to the nearest parent with a position style. So if that white box doesn't have a position style, you won't be able to position it in the center of that white box because it's going to position to the page or to something else. If you want to position it within that white box, you need to make sure the white box has position relative. Then inside of it, you put position absolute on the component.
Perfect.
You have to
That
move it.
sounds
Like
as
you
though
have to
it's-
move it with margin or top left properties, and you can move it, but once it's position absolute, it will no longer affect anything else on the page.
Do you
Perfect.
want to try it?
Thank you
Andrew?
very much.
Do you want to try it so we can see?
Yeah, you can try it if you want.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Let me share my screen again.
Yeah, just parent div, position relative, and then you'll do absolute, and you might have to absolute on the component, and you just might have to push it with top, left, right, or margin, like Drew said. So, you're on the text right now. You need to hit the div.
Okay, so the div itself.
The text can't contain anything. So you actually might want to wrap that. If you want it inside the text, you might want to wrap the text inside of a div and then put the component.
Okay, I've got you.
Is that correct, Drew?
Yeah, I actually got a little confused. Is the text the big white box? It's a text.
It is actually, it's a text box, yes. It will have text in it ultimately, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, do what Josh said.
Right, okay.
You need to
Set
put
that div as
you need to-
well.
Yeah. And then
Yep.
the component will go inside of that div that you just created as well. Because that's the parent that's going to give it its guidance.
And
Before
then-
it was just a sibling, and siblings can't tell each other what to do. Ish. I'm sure Drew would be like, well, they can. You just know CSS better. That's my limit.
No, I think it's a good way to think about it. So what he's saying too is like that's correct for the position, but before you move it around, put that component inside of that div you created so that there's a div with the text and then the component underneath. Yeah.
Got
There
you.
you go.
Okay.
Now it's
And
relevant.
now-
Now you're all set up. So you position it, and you can do that top and bottom, or you can do margin top and bottom. But yeah, that should.
Perfect.
If
The
you want
top
something,
is going to be the white, and the left is going to be of the white.
Perfect. That's exactly what I need. Thank you so much. That's really helpful.
All right. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to time. I'll upload this as soon as I can. I hope you'll have a great day. Next week, we've got regular office hours, and then Josh has pro office hours. So if you want some extra help, some more focused help, that is the way to go. Josh, any other updates you want to share?
updates. Just
There's
more.
a lot.
there's a lot. I don't think there's nothing else big at the moment. We'll have some more content. I think maybe this week. It might get all pushed to next week. But I think like there's gonna be probably 15 to 20 videos on data management and setting stuff into Studio, using data throughout the Studio, using the JSON example with AI there. For me, it was like a really big unlock to realize data, even realizing for me that when we data bind a collection to a repeating list, it's just putting in JSON into it. I didn't know that for the longest time. And realizing that and knowing that you can then in ChatGPT create any format for JSON that you want, you can create any element you want on the page with instructions to ChatGPT to give you a JSON format that you can follow instructions from. And then you just set it into a list row and a repeating list element, and it can do whatever you want. So you can create pages from chat literally with just the OpenAI action and then rules of flows following up based off that instruction or setting it into certain elements on the page. It's legitimately crazy to me what you can do. And I think, one, look for all those types of things in the Studio over the coming months. But two, as you build your projects, unlocking AI in that way is a much more sophisticated way. Everyone in the world right now is like, well, how could I introduce chat into my pages? It's almost just table stakes at this point. It's not that impressive to most people. How you programmatically use it to do certain unique things is what's going to be really especially unique. And I think I'm excited for more content on that. The data management piece is connected to it because if you know how to do them together, you can really do a lot of crazy stuff. And so I guess announcement would just be expect a lot more content on that soon. I've got a couple AI blog posts too, which are more targeted at the small established business about how they can use AI in their business a little bit more, but hopefully they're valuable as well.
Excellent. We look forward to reading that. So it sounds like two big things, like how to actually build in Builder using AI, and then how to put AI in your actual applications and do cool things. So very, very awesome. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you
Recording
next week.
stopped.
Hey, Chris, did you join?
I didn't even know Chris was here.
Oh,
Thanks.
man.
Thanks for the
I
help
love
today. We
it.
appreciate it.
guys.
Bye, Chris. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.